Hello, everyone. Welcome into Crushing Strongholds. This is a podcast where we turn pain into power, trauma into triumph, and a place where we can just focus on becoming a better version of ourselves. It's also a place where we get to expose the lies of the enemy. And how do we do that? We do that by equipping believers in the truth and the grace and the love of Jesus Christ. And that's what this podcast is about. And that's where the heart and soul is. And today I'm super excited because I have a guest with me. And this individual is an amazing. I'm so excited. I've only gotten to know him just a few minutes, but I can't wait to get to know him much further. Um, he has so much going on that I can't wait for him to share it with you because I know I'm going to miss something. But he is a
Mm.
podcaster. He is a author. He has, I believe, 8 books now on faith devotionals.
Yeah, there are about nine. Yeah, probably about 7 or 8 books. Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I'm on my
eight
ninth.
books.
I'm doing the ninth one soon. So
Yeah, and he's working on a new podcast, which I'm going to let him tell you all about it. So today, I just want to bring to the table and introduce you to my newfound friend, Javier. Thank you for coming and welcome in.
hi, Mickey. Thank you so much for having me, Mickey. I appreciate it. I'm excited. I love sharing with fellow Christians, fellow friends. I'm glad to meet you. I always love to meet new people and have wonderful faith-based conversations. And hopefully, what we talk about will have someone lift them up or give them some uh, stronger faith to move forward in this crazy world that we live in now.
Exactly. So, can you do us a favor and can you tell us about your upcoming podcast? Because I want to hear more about it. I'm excited. And when is it going to
Sure,
be
sure.
launched?
Well, as you know, I have the Compass Chronicles podcast. So that's the first one I started with. The next one that's coming, which is I'm actually really excited about and nervous as well, is called the Kingdom Forward podcast. This one's going to be more of a live interviews and discussions, and it's going to be on real difficult issues that Christians don't like to talk about. I want it to be where it's going to be like, whoa, why is he talking about this? Well, because it affects us in ways that you may not understand, but they do. It could be anything from the politics to our mental health, which I'm a huge advocate of mental health help. Uh, just anything, family, kids, children, any issues that really, really affect us in our daily lives, but are afraid to talk about it. Those are the subjects I want to bring up. As Christians, we sometimes tend to be afraid to discuss issues because we think that, people may see us differently or think something differently. But I believe in being open, allow God to clear your heart and your spirit and maybe helping someone else say, oh, wow, I'm not the only one, or I've been there, or I understand it, or I have a place where I can talk about it. I have a place where someone can and the thing is, I'm not just looking for Christians to come on either. I'm looking for people who want to understand who Christ is and want to understand what faith is. So those are the people that I would like to at least listen to the podcast and understand where I'm coming from. It's in early stages right now. I'm working on uh, with Rory, as you know, Rory. I'm trying to work with him to try and get everything organized and you know how it is to set up a podcast, a logo, and ideas and all this stuff. So yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully we're gonna get it done by the end of September. We're looking at that. I don't like to rush it because then it kind of looks, I'm not rushing it. I'm leaving it in God's time. He'll open the doors when things are happening, just like he did with Compass Chronicles. But just to go back a little bit of who I am, just so people get to know me a little bit. My name is Javier. I am 57 years old. I am a born and bred New Yorker. People hear me, they can hear my accent. People say we have accents. I never do that. So that's very strange. But yeah, I've been married, gonna be in November 33 or 34 years. Honey, if I'm wrong, please don't kill me.
Wow.
Uh,
Congratulations.
yeah, we just celebrated our children's 27th and 30th birthdays. So we have two grown children. Uh, One lives with us and works in the city, and the other one lives in Indiana. She works out up there. So yeah. When we talk about adversity and going through through issues that God has helped us come through. I think that's sort of what the topic is about. Just to give a little backstory, I used to weigh over 300 and something pounds. I was a very heavy man. I was a smoker. I drank. I did everything under the sun as a heavy set man or person just didn't care. Um, so I decided on myself because I've ended up in the hospital a lot of times, diabetes, blood pressure, whatever situation was. So I decided to become a vegan, which is very, for someone who, if you know the Hispanic culture, we love meat, we love anything with spice and anything like
Lots
that.
of
So
tacos.
yes, a lot of stuff like that, and especially in a Puerto Rican household, we have to have some sort of meat or some sort of protein in the food. Um, but I decided for my own health, let me just try and change the way I eat. And it was tough, but actually it lowered my A1C. It did a lot of stuff. And I actually started to work out. I started to run. Now, if you ever ask my wife, I was one that wouldn't even go to the corner store to pick anything up. I would send somebody. That's how lazy. I couldn't walk. Everything hurt. Because when you're heavy or don't care about yourself, the body's going to say, well, okay, I'm going to not work for you. So I decided to work out and I started running and training. And for a person who never ran, I started walking, obviously, and then I started walking 6 miles a day. And then I started running 6 miles a day. And just to cut the short, I was training for the Brooklyn half marathon, which would have been my first half marathon ever. I've run 5Ks, I've run, but this would have been my first 10 mile. Because my goal in life was to run for the first time ever the New York City Marathon. Even
Mm.
if I get there at 2 in the morning, I wanted to run it. But God had other plans. I was training, and one day I got home and I wasn't feeling well. And I told my wife, honey, I don't feel well. She goes, maybe you kind of overtrained. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you should take a break. I said, you know what? Yeah. And then I started to lay down in bed, and I ended up in the middle of the night telling my wife, I don't feel well at all. I really don't. He took my temperature, I was 103.
Mm.
Um, and we ran to the hospital. And it's funny, but that day happened to be one of the worst rainstorms New York City has ever had. And where we live near the East River, so it gets flooded. So that day, obviously, the, the ambulance came and they said, no, we have to take you to NYU Hospital because that's the closest. And due to weather, we have to take you there. Obviously, they took me there, and all in all, I ended up getting to the hospital with I was septic and I only had about 5% breathing in my lungs. My lungs were fully blocked. To this day, they don't know what caused it. Um, so they intubated me for 6 days.
Mm.
And they told my wife, you should make plans. We don't think he's going to wake up. He's really, really, really that sick. Uh, but God had other ideas. He woke me up on the 6th day. You see it? I was some tell like, the 6th day, God, you know, rose me up from the dead like Lazarus and just took me. Um, but just to say, when I woke up, I woke up really, really upset because I didn't know what was going on. I was confused. When you wake up from that, you're like, what the heck's going on? And my body was not moving the way it should move. My legs were totally, what I tell people is like, think about when you sit the wrong way and your leg gets sleepy.
Mm.
That's what I feel through my whole body every day. Because I ended up uh, with a disease called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a very rare disease, GBS. What it does, I'll explain it really simple. It's just look at an electrical wire and then the outside black part, right? That protects the insides of all those green, red, yellow wires that make electricity run. My disease eats the outside
Mm.
and then makes the nerves not function. So I'm in a wheelchair most of the time. I don't have any sensation from my legs up to here. And when I walk, I have no flexion on the ankles as well. So uh, they didn't know what caused it to this day. They didn't know if it was fungal or airborne, or they took so many tests. I was in the hospital for over 3 months. trying to, because I couldn't walk. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to grab stuff again, how to put up. It was that bad. And I was angry through the whole thing. I hated God through the whole thing. Because just a little backstory, I've been a Christian since I was 18. Well, I knew about God since I was 18. Uh, I got saved at 17 at a Pentecostal church, um, a long, long time ago. Um, but obviously, when you're 17, you just sort of go with the flow. You don't really know what you're doing, or if you don't have that support that you need, especially as a new Christian, you kind of wave. And then I was in a place where it was more of a emotional hysterics than more of a biblical teaching. So I was more, you know, um, based on that. But either way, so I knew about God and I knew about everything, salvation and all that stuff, but I never lived it. I always did my own thing. I always said, well, if I'm saved, I'm good. I don't have to really, you know, I took grace for granted, as they say.
Mm.
Um, so anyway, I was in the hospital and I got home. I was super angry at the world, at God, at me, because I'm a man, and as men, we sometimes tend to see we don't want to be burdened on our family. We're the ones that have to take the burden, not them. So that was one of my issues. I couldn't do stuff. I could do anything. I couldn't work. I was a revenue analyst for Cornell Hospital for many years. That's in layman's terms a medical biller, but in the S degree, um, which I was doing for over 30 years. So to stop doing that and to not be able to really do stuff for yourself and got to learn to redo everything. I just blamed God on everything. I said, nah, man, I really was trying to get to know you better. And this is what happens. And it took me, because I'm very open with it, it took me to try and end myself, um, to realize that, I was taken to a hospital and I was there for a week being evaluated and stuff to make sure. Uh, and I wasn't really knowing God the way that I know him now. I was just like, all these things are happening and everything. So I decided to create a podcast called The Intellectual Sasquatch. Now, the reason I call it that is because Sasquatch is because my kids always called me that because I always done stuff rough. I've always done like, I'll just move and run through stuff. Or if I'm doing something, I'll be very, I'm adamant. If I'm focused on something, I'm going with it and I'm going to ram through it. So my daughter would always say, "You're such a Sasquatch. You just walk through everything." And you know what? I said, that makes sense. And intellectual is because I love philosophy. I love the Stoic philosophy. I love anything like that. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna make this podcast to prove that God is not who He says He is. This whole fallacy about faith and trust and all this, everything you learn as a kid is all just fantasy. It's all
Mm.
garbage. There really isn't anything that fate is not controlled by some natural spirit. It's the dumb stuff we do, right?
Mm.
So, and in that process, you have to look at the word in order to go against the word, because you have to study it in order to see flaws in it, right? Because you're trying to defend your point and trying to break down who God is, which is absolutely the most ridiculous thing we can do.
That's the
You
best way
can't
to do it.
doubt
If you're
God.
going to question God, the best way to do it is
Yeah,
to get the Bible and go at it
that
because God will show you
yeah,
in
and
an
that's
amazing way.
exactly
He'll
what.
open your
Yep,
eyes.
for sure. And I've read books. I've read every self-help book you can imagine, every mental health book, everything. So I tried to look at where the Bible stood and every time I read the Bible, God would always open up something new. And he'd be like, wait, that makes sense. But hold on, it's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to be. So instead of deconstructing me, God was reconstructing me
That's
in my
awesome.
own way, in his own way. Um, and the thing is, I talk to God like I'm talking to you. I don't talk to him in this sort of like, oh, no, hey, God, I got issues. You got to help me. I don't understand it. Or I say, hey, Pop, what's up? Come on. I need to know because I don't get it. And that's the way my relationship has been with him now. I look at him and I say, I don't get it. I don't understand it, but what's going on? And so I started to look more and started to realize, you know what? Everything that's happening now, there's a reason why God, everything is done. Uh, and I started to say, you know what? I love comic books. I love God. And I just love pop culture in general. I love everything about movies and art and all that. And I said, you know what? Maybe I can combine both. As I'm
Yeah.
learning to look at God again, why not look for Him in the genre that I enjoy? Because if you look for God, you'll find God. God is in everything.
Yeah. And
God is in everything we do.
this is the section where, um, and I love your testimony, by the way. You and I have a lot more in common, brother, than I would have ever guessed, because I actually was over 300 pounds myself, and I have a
There you
story I
go.
could share with you. But um,
Sure.
this is your time, but and I'm so excited about where you're getting ready to go here, because as I started to learn about you and kind of stalk you on your Facebook, so to speak, to get to know you, I was like, I can't wait to talk to this guy, because um, I do not know anyone, and I mean this literally, that is willing to dive into pop culture and plug it in with Christianity. And because it's so diverse, and because, kids are rebellious. And the pop
Hmm.
culture we live in, music, entertainment, all of it comes across, especially in the world we live in right now, with so much evil.
For
Like
sure.
all of the
For sure.
entertainment is like, there's so much talk about it, but yet we forget there's still God's connection with everything and everyone. And
For
you're
sure.
doing that. And I
Hmm.
absolutely am so thrilled for what you're doing. And I think you're going to make a huge impact with that, because um, it needs to be done. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
I've never met anybody else that's doing it. So what you're doing
That's
is
yeah.
huge. I love the
Yeah.
comic book era. Like I said, Captain America is my favorite. I know I'm a Marvel, but
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, we all have our preferences, but still, it's still
Right.
comic book world. It's still
Right.
animation. It's still cartoonish. It's still fun. It's something we enjoy. But we think
Hmm.
sometimes with God, we can't have those things. But we
Right.
forget that God wants us to have the desires of our heart. We just don't know how to
Hmm.
plug the two together. And guess what? You're doing
Correct.
that. So
Yeah.
I can't
Thank
wait.
you.
So can you share with our audience what that
Yeah.
looks like?
Sure. Well, it was a work in progress because before that it was we were called Compass. We were actually called the Crossroads of Thought. That's how we started First the Christian, uh, where I wanted to mix this life and trying to talk about anything that was happening, and then I wanted to start a podcast on that on comic books. So I started the Faithful Geek podcast. So there were two podcasts I was doing. I was doing the Crossroads, and then I was doing the Faithful Geek. But they tended to cross into each other for some reason.
Mm.
I ended up putting together. So I said, you know what? Instead of doing two, let me just combine them. And then I said, you know what? Let's just create the Compass Chronicles Faith, Fandom, and Life podcast. And the reason I wanted to do this type of podcast is because one thing I realized that Christians, we tend to eat each other when we don't understand. We're the only people that tend to beat each other up when we don't understand something. And we tend to scare people away. Um, and my whole idea was to bring those people that would never walk in a church, would never understand what it is to open a Bible or anything like that, because they're in a one thing people have to understand: people that are into comic books, anime, pop culture are very into it. They're huge fans, and if it doesn't attract them in that way, they're not going to even pay attention to it. So I said, you know what? God created art. He gave us the imagine. The reason I say that is because who could ever be the biggest artist in the world if it was God? God created this beautiful world we live in, this amazing sky, the colors, the animals. I mean, what other artist could ever do that, right? So if He said, let's make them like us, then obviously He gave us that imagination. He gave us that beauty of art. Now, obviously, the devil will take art and totally destroy it and totally. But the way I look at it is like the ideas that these people come up with, the stories. I mean, the imagination you have to have and the vision. To me, that just excites me. And I think as Christians, we should be excited at the art and at the at just at the not just the art, but the stories and everything else that comes behind. Could be music, could be art, it could be anime, comic book. uh, literature, uh, all that stuff is just if you now I'm not saying to add God to it just to make it sound right. What I'm trying to do is take whatever I can out of that and showing that yeah, God works in these sort of ways. Like Batman, I use Batman as the loss of his family, right? And
Hmm.
that made him who he is, right? So I decided to put that together into when we have loss in our lives, how God directs us into where we need to be or makes us the person to be. We don't let our situations create us. We let God take that situation and mold us into what we need to be and how to deal with that situation. So I try to mix both the Batman and life. Superman, obviously, everybody knows Superman. So I try to do Jesus and Superman. And I do a lot of different stuff. I'll use anime because I think anime has so much potential. It could be really a big use for faith. Obviously, anime is can be very very bad. There are some animes that I watch one episode and I said nope, that's it, I'm done. There's no way. Not that I'm not strong enough to watch it and go through it, but why? Why put myself where I have to really try and work it out? Um, I do watch animes and stuff that are very adult oriented, but I can differentiate when it's not. I'll know it's fake. It's not real. It's not, and then I'll notice if the agenda is a little bit more than what I want out. I won't recommend it or I won't talk about it. Uh, I do talk about a lot of different animes. There's some animes they talk about friendship and they talk about how to deal with life and things like that. And I'll try to combine both together because I think people in that world don't really have the support that they need. Because people tend to see us as that we're still children in a way, that we haven't grown up because we like comic books and we like figures and stuff. Sure, you can say that. I'm like, I'm famous Toys R Us kids. I don't want to grow up. I never want to grow up. I think the Bible says the heart as a child, right? Come to him as a child. Not in mental, but my love for God is like a toy to me. Like I love the whole relationship I have with God now. I mean, it's something that I thought I would never have.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's what pushes me to continue to do the podcast and continue to come with ideas. I try to do some episodes that aren't very fandom based. I try to do it more, a little bit more faith and life based, just to change it around a little bit. Um, but yeah, I have a lot of fun trying to figure out where things are in certain anime or certain cartoons or uh, uh, animation or anything like that. Because I think about it as a kid, when we used to watch Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner and all that, there was always some sort of moral lesson there.
Hmm.
Always, there was always some little bit of a, you can't blow something up. Like we didn't need to be explained that if you put dynamite in your hand, you're gonna blow up, you're gonna die. I mean, it's just we knew that.
Right.
I mean, I don't under. I think that's one of the things they dumbed us down a little bit. Society has dumbed down the kids, and kids can't differentiate that an explosion will, you know. So, and I just look at that and say, you know what? There's always a moral story in anything you look at, be
Hmm.
it bad, be it good. So yeah, I have animes that I have things that I'm episodes that I want to talk about that the anime is extremely bad, extremely horrible. But I want to show where the dangers are from
Right.
watching something like that, because I think we need to let people know more about what the dangers are and how to see things and talk about how they are. Because especially young people, their minds are still being formed and being and God. And I think by letting them know that they can still enjoy the stuff, they can still be, as we call otakus, we can still be comic book heads, but still love God
Yeah.
and still love God and still follow his calling. And you can see God in everything. I mean, God is in everything.
Gotcha.
So that's the way I kind of like try to push, you know.
Well, I want to
Um,
ask you a couple of questions, kind of back to your
sure.
testimony a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
with this podcast being about crushing a stronghold, because crushing strongholds is about which your testimony proves that you're an overcomer and there's obstacles that we face in life. And I can relate with you when you were talking about getting angry with God and how, when you go through something that's very traumatic. You start manifesting things that you didn't even know you had.
For
And
sure, yeah.
even things from your childbirth on up, because you're trying to put pieces together and you're trying to understand it, and you're wondering why the creator of the universe isn't giving you all the answers that we're
Right.
wanting. And I think that's why we question God and why we get angry with
Hmm.
God, because we have our own ideas of what we think God should do or shouldn't do sometimes.
Right,
But he
right.
puts us in the middle of the storm for a reason. And you went through a horrific storm, and you were able to overcome it. So when you started to experience, after you were sick and in the hospital, and then you went through that depression part, are you
Hmm.
comfortable with me talking about the depression
Oh
part?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm a huge I'm very open. I have nothing to hide. What you
Yeah,
see is
you're
what
an
you get.
advocate for mental health, so I thought you'd be okay with me asking
Yeah,
you.
I'm a huge advocate of mental health. I think it's something that like I said, I'm not afraid to show where I was at that time. I was very in a dark place. Uh, I was in a
How did you use
wheelchair.
your faith to start getting back to where you needed to be from where you kind of
Well, you know
went?
what's funny is actually what started all this to where I'm at now was actually a visit to my primary physician for a follow up. And I loved my doctor. She's no longer my doctor. She retired.
Mm,
But um, she was one of those doctors that really wanted to know who you are, wanted to understand you, just not treat your ailment.
right.
And one day I got there, and I'm always one that always smiles, no matter what the situation is. I'll smile, I'll talk to you, even though I'm dying inside. I'm not one to really show it like that. And one day she tells me, you know what? You have a right to be angry. You can be angry. You don't have to be so. And I said, I because I see you. You're not smiling at me, and I know, and I'm like, yeah. So when she told me that, I said, you know what? I do have a right to be angry. And I got really angry. I let it all out. And like I said, I did try to end everything. And doing that, after doing that and coming home, they give you a therapist. They give you they give you a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a psychologist. So I said, you know what? Because one thing with Christianity, people don't believe. They believe that, and it's okay, but that mental health isn't an issue for Christians. And I'm sorry to say, but it is,
It's different.
because it's not necessarily a demon in your, because it could be chemical, it could be medicinal, it could be traumatic, it could be a lot of things that affect. We're human. God gave us these feelings, and there are times where our body or brain doesn't understand them, and we follow away. And I just thought that it would be easier if I wasn't around to be a burden for my family. I didn't want anybody to carry me. I didn't want anybody to tell me Um, so I decided to go to therapy, and I remember the first time I went, I was like, "What the heck am I doing here? Like, God, what is this? What is this and craziness? I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to tell people my story." And but in there was something that just made me speak to, and my therapist, her name is Julie, which I totally love her. Um, he is one of those people that he's not a believer, but is so open to thoughts and ideas and things that she was the one who kept telling me, prayer and thoughts and all are things that you need to do. You need to look for those things. You need to, you know, prayer can also be a sort of meditation. It could be a way to calm you down. It could be where you know, and but during all that, I really became a huge advocate for it. Uh, um, I've written a book on it, just to let people know that just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that God hasn't provided other people to help you. Because it's supposed to be everybody helping everybody. So if He gave these people the knowledge and the patience and the will to help other people get through something, then when He gives you that, He opens the door for that. That means it's a good thing. It's He's leading you to that. If it was a bad thing, God would never let you sit there and give up all this stuff. Sure, we do come to God and we ask God all the time, every morning, thank you for waking me up. And the first thing I say is, God, I'm gonna mess up. I know I'm gonna mess up today. But
Right.
you know, I ask that you help me out for the day. If I know I'm going to do something wrong, sort of knock me in the back of my head, said, hey, what are you doing? And then going to therapy every Wednesday helps me do that. Helps me sort of get back to square one and like like you are, we have so many things on the plate, so many things going on, and when your emotions are not there, everything's chaos. Everything is, you know, and so far, it's been something. It's a work in progress. It's not a finish. This is not a race. It's a marathon. Um, but I have such faith that what I'm doing is something God wants me to do and something that I think He's opened many doors, like I'm speaking to you now. That's something I never thought years ago, 4 years ago, that I was going to be talking to people on podcasts or having a
Right?
podcast or writing book or
Mm-hmm.
writing I have a coffee company now that I started, Grace and Grind Roastery. So that's something that I'm starting up that I enjoy doing. Things that I enjoy that I think I can share my faith through them.
Mm-hmm.
I just did a last how do you call it? Devotional called for otakus, which are people who love anime. So each chapter is based on an anime character, and then the biblical part of it, and then the thought, and I always put a what they call a what is it? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Call to action, a CTA. I always put a CTA at the end of
Right.
every, and I leave space in there so they can write. Um, so that one I'm excited about. I have two of those that are for people who are geek and nerd that will never pretty much ever open a Bible if it's not um, in some sort of fun way. So I thought maybe if I did this, let people read and see that, yeah, through all these animes that you look at, God is there and talking to you and letting you know and showing you that, yeah, I'm here, I'm real, no matter your faults, no matter what you look like, what you like,
Yeah.
I'm here waiting. I'll direct you. We're living examples of that. Um, I my testimony, I can go back all the way to when I was a drug addict and when, I almost had a, me and my wife were at the verge of divorce. I mean, there's a lot of things that I've gone in my life that
Mm-hmm.
God has always been the one to, even if I didn't know it or didn't believe it,
Right.
He was there.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing is, my wife is the biggest prayer warrior I will ever know. She is the strongest person in that way that I've ever known. She constantly is, my rock when it comes to that. You know, whenever I have a situation or something that I don't, or she knows that I'm not feeling, she'll come to me like, let's pray, or I'll pray for it, I'll pray for you, or things like that. And so, I look for her to that example, because you sometimes as a man, God gives us this authority and these things that we are responsible for. I
Right.
mean, it's just the way the Bible is. Men are responsible we're the head of the house.
Right.
And spiritually, we need to be the head of the house.
That's good.
That's the law that God gave us. It's in the Bible. And it's not putting down any of women and what they do. No. But we have a certain responsibility
Mm-hmm.
that we have to take care of that a woman does not have or a wife does not have. She has other responsibilities that God has given her, which
Mm-hmm.
is to support what we do on children and all that. But I don't look at it as any different than I am. She
Right.
is exactly in the same position. She's my queen. She's definitely where I need to be with, or we're at a place where we know that God has my responsibilities that I have to deal with and hers. And, and as a marriage, we do try to combine both and see how we can work it out. But, and you take that upon yourself as a man
Mm-hmm.
when things don't go wrong or things are going crazy or whatever. You tend to beat yourself up and saying, wait, maybe I did that wrong or maybe I should have. And then God comes in and goes, don't worry about that. It's in
Yeah.
the past. I forgot about that. That's garbage. You don't need to, let's move forward.
Right.
Let's take what you learned and let's move forward and let me take you there. You know,
Does she ever
um,
do podcasts with you?
um, we did start. What's funny is we did start a podcast of daily devotional every
Oh,
Wednesdays.
nice.
Just like a 10-15 minute little talk and then a little prayer at the end. Sort of middle of the week sort of break for people if they need something to give them a little umph during the middle of the week. Was the hump day. Everybody Wednesdays is like, oh.
Yeah.
So we tried, but we did release a few, but it just didn't click, or it was just too much right now.
Right.
So we just put that in the back burner for now. But I think once the Forge gets started, I think that's where we're going to be more, where she'll be on, actually on with me, or um, I'm looking forward to meeting new people, and then hopefully do the uh, the Compass also for live interviews, because there are a lot of Christians that are big fandom fans. They love pop culture. And they're not seen, and I think they need to be seen. They need to be talked to. They need to be acknowledged and helped. So yeah.
Well, that and the Kingdom Forge too, I think will connect you with some people. But I have a
Oh yeah,
question for you. I have a
sure.
question. So, what do you think? What advice would you give someone who feels stuck or ashamed of their stronghold and doesn't know how to take the next step into crushing it? Because sometimes I think we get stuck. So I believe in my heart that God, with God's characteristic and our God-given purpose, in His Word, it says that He created us for a purpose and we have an assignment. He assigned all of us to do something specifically. And some of it may
Right.
be similar, like there's teachers, preachers,
Sure.
prophets and all of that. We're all disciples. Every one of us is a disciple.
Right.
We're all a student to learn, and we're all a student that's able to help someone else to learn. And I think
Hmm.
that God gave us that assignment and that ability. But when we get stuck behind a stronghold, we sometimes feel guilt and shame, and that puts the roadblock up. The strongholds in the Bible, it says we have to tear them down. And I love your scripture where it says you have to build yourself back up brick by brick. In my
Hmm.
podcast, I say you have to tear them down brick by brick, the
Right.
strongholds. But then you know what? The rebuilding comes. So I love that you said
Hmm.
that. But
Thank you.
I wanted to share that with you. But so, what would you tell someone that feels like they're just too ashamed and they just feel like they have to stay stuck?
Well, and I can only speak on my own situation, but what I would tell people is, first of all, don't be afraid to acknowledge that you're stuck. Don't be afraid. Don't be helpless, saying, "Oh, I'm stuck and I can't do anything." Why? Um, First thing is acknowledge that you're in a place where you don't want to be, and then decide, I want to be out of here. I want to get out of here. What do I do next? And for a lot of people, I always say, talk to God like if you talk to me. You don't have to pray. You don't have to get on your knees. You don't have to just sit back 1 minute and go, "Hey, God, I don't know if you're hearing me, and I know I haven't talked to you, but I'm going through something." And just let it out. And sometimes God will give you that peace. He may not fix it at the moment, but he'll give you that little bit of peace, knowing that you talk to him and he hears you. He's not ignoring you. And that not that every stronghold, look at the foundation of that stronghold, right?
Mhm.
Nothing will stand up unless that foundation is strong. So if you go for the foundation and you see that it's weak, hit that foundation, bang it away. It'll drop that wall.
Mhm.
But look at where that wall sits on, because we have to create the foundation of everything we do in life and whatever we put on it, right?
Right.
So God is supposed to be our foundation. He even says in the word, don't build your house on sand, build it on a
Right.
strong foundation. So if your stronghold, and if you look at it, it's in a foundation that is extremely weak, and you know that, then hit that foundation. Don't go for the wall yet. Don't go for the wall. Go for the foundation, because when you hit that foundation, the wall's going to start to wobble.
Mhm.
And before you know it, the wall's going to start to tip and pick apart, because it can't stand on its own without a strong foundation. And if you
Yeah.
don't feed that foundation, and if you try to work that foundation and then put God there in that foundation as the cement, then that wall will either crumble or it will become stronger in his faith. He will rebuild it. Or as we do, you put new caulk when you do new bathroom, you caulk it brand new, you scrape off the old and you rebuild. And that's the way I see and the way my life is. My wall is always up,
Right.
but my wall was redesigned or repurposed for what it is now, not what it was before, where I had this, I hated everyone or life sucked or whatever. And that's the way I tell people, like, first hit the foundation. Look at where it's coming from. From where is it coming from? Outside source, an internal source, or something you may be reading. Because people sometimes don't realize that things you see or do affect you mentally and physically and emotionally, even if you don't know it, they
Hmm.
do. So that's my advice, and that's just it works for me. I'm not saying it works for everyone else,
Right.
but what I'm saying is look at your foundation, look at where that problem is,
Okay.
and
That's great.
see if you could be the problem. Sometimes people don't realize that they themselves
Yeah.
are their own
It's himself.
worst enemy. Yeah, we can beat ourselves up pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm a huge person that does that a lot, and I still do it sometimes when I can't. I'm sort of a perfectionist when it comes to stuff or podcasts and stuff. I'll work on it 10 hours for one script
It's
because
got to
I
allow
just think that
yourself
it's
some
great.
grace too, because God gives us
Yeah,
grace.
and that's one of the biggest things that I've been praying for and working on and therapy and everything. Because she even tells me you
Hmm.
got to take a breather, you got to relax.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's my advice. And also have find someone that is out of the picture, like not in your life in a sense,
Right.
that can look
To
at it
get
from an
help.
outside point
Hmm.
of view.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes, as they say, a lot of eyes looking at something from different views will
Mm-hmm.
get you a different idea.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to pick a friend's not going to really tell you, unless
Right.
he's a really good friend and tell you off, because I
Yeah.
do. I have one good friend, he'll tell me straight out, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Don't do this, you're
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
Everyone needs that one person. Everyone needs that one friend. God is that one friend also, right?
Hmm.
Christ is that one friend. He'll knock you in the back of
Amen.
your head sometimes, say, listen, you know, let's go. I pointed you here.
Yeah.
So let's go, and that's the way I see it. I see, take care of that foundation, find someone to talk to, have civil discourse, because I think that's the biggest thing that's lost in this world. Discussion.
Right.
I put up a thing on Facebook the other day. It's like God says, I called you to catch fish. I called you to have a discussion, not an argument, not to win
Yes.
an argument. We're
Yes.
not here to win an argument.
Right.
You know,
I
we're here
see.
to understand. So
That's a
yeah,
good post. I've
so
seen that a couple of times, but I want to
yeah.
share a scripture with you, and I want to
Hmm.
see if because we have a common interest. I was telling you about this before we jumped on here live.
Right, right.
I want to see if you'll I know you'll connect the dots probably right away because we have a common interest, and I want to talk about it briefly before we start wrapping up. So this
Sure.
scripture is Isaiah 53:5. It says, "But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we were healed." Who am I talking about?
I personally think it's Striper, the band.
Yay! Oh my gosh, I
So
saw you were a Striper fan. I was like,
I'm a huge
hairband
Striper
fan.
fan. Oh, big 80s hair metal fan. Oh, huge. My friends, and it's so funny because I'm Hispanic and we can't have our hair grow. So the closest thing we ever had was Jerry curls. That was the closest thing we ever had to long hair. But yeah, I love. I've seen Striper. Whew, not too big, but my wife and I first ever date was a Striper concert in
Oh,
1988
nice.
at Radio City Music Hall. We still have the tickets. We
Mm,
still have the picture. Because I used to work at the biggest Christian bookstore in New York City back then. It was called Christian Publications.
yeah.
It was in Times Square. It was the biggest one in the state. And I met my wife through there. She went in there looking for a cassette. I've always loved heavy metal music. I always loved hard rock. And when Christian music became that, I started listening to Petra first.
I like Petra too.
Petra,
Nakua.
and Petra was, yeah. And I started listening. I was a big CCM, fan. I've seen all kind. I've seen Mylan. I've seen everybody from back in the 80s and 90s. As a matter of fact, I talk with Brian Duncan a lot when he's on Twitter, and so I love him. But yeah, I when you said that, I said, oh, Isaiah, yeah, that's Striper all the way. Um,
Yeah.
haven't
Do
seen
you
him
know
in a
their
while.
story? Do you know their backlog story? Because Michael Sweet, like he left Striper and then he went on his own and then now they're back
Mhm,
together. And I was when I seen that you liked Striper, I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't listened to them forever because
mhm.
I was in the hairband phase with a lot of like other hair bands that I shouldn't have been listening to. But
Right,
I
right.
was so happy I found Striper because even as a Christian, I felt it gave me a little bit more peace and my peace of
Hmm.
mind thinking I probably shouldn't be listening to this music, but I like the hairband thrasher kind of music.
Right, of
And
course,
Striper
of
came
course.
along and I was like, okay, God, thank you. Because I felt like, oh, and it gave me something I can still have. But one thing I noticed with Striper is like most bands out there, they go
Hmm.
through the fame and the entertainment. They hit um the they do the drugs. They do the,
The
excuse the
lifestyle,
expression,
yeah,
but
they live
the
the
sex,
lifestyle, yeah,
drugs, and rock and roll, they did it.
of
But you know
course.
what they did? They came back together. They went through sobriety and they conquered it. And I love
Hmm.
the end punchline to their story, even though the beginning was kind of, and people question them. How can you be a Christian band, singing
Right.
about, certain things? And I get it. I get because we're not supposed to partake in the world. But they showed a great example because they went through it, they made their mistakes, they stayed together, they came back, they reunified, and their faith is stronger now than it's ever been.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
amazing. Their story is amazing. And I encourage
Yeah,
anybody listening to go check them out because I
yes,
was
for
blown
sure.
away.
Yeah, they unfortunately Michael and Robert's father just passed away not too long ago.
Um,
And that was a sad. They were on tour, so they couldn't go see him. So that kind of hurt me a little bit because I know how that is.
yeah,
I can't even imagine you want to be there with your dad, and you have responsibilities, unfortunately. But yeah, Striper has been. Oh my goodness! The thing is, I started believing God. I went to a Pentecostal church, uber Pentecostal. I'm talking about no makeup, no nothing.
yeah,
Women length, ankle length hair. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. Hey, and I love it because it was my foundation for Christ. It was. That's where I got saved. So everything was. But I remember when we got the cassette tape, and now I'm dating myself. When we got the cassette tape
me too. I'm
uh,
like, ah. Oops.
for Soldiers Under Command, and I put it in for the first time, and I'm a big rock fan, like, and I heard that. I was like, nah, that can't be Christian, man. There's no way that's Christian music because we're used to hearing hymns or you know
Yeah,
soft songs or whatever. And back then there wasn't no thing as yeah praise. We didn't have a hill song. We didn't have a all these big praise and worship groups. We just had regular. And back then Pentecostal we're not allowed to listen to any type of that music. We just there's no way.
very secular. Yeah,
Uh, right? Yeah. Which and I'm sorry to say I hate that word.
I know.
I really hate that because secular means that it's it's so a word that makes everything sound bad,
It's selective.
but it's not. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's what I was looking for. And Striper just blew everything out the water. Once I saw Striper, then I got into Barren Cross, into Bloodgood, into all these heavy bands that took me away from, as you said, the hair metal bands like Rat and Skid Row, and not that I didn't go
yes,
see them
Quiet
because I
Riot.
saw
Oh
them,
man, Lord forgive
you
me.
know,
Some of those
and
bands.
and my yeah, and until this day, my number one band is Metallica. I love Metallica.
Yeah, for a
Always
lot of
have.
people.
Saw them a few times. Not now. Now they've become too poppy too, and I don't. But see, to me, music. I love all types of music, and I will listen to it, be it Christian, be it non-Christian, because I believe there are Christians in bands that are not Christian bands. They're just Christians in a band. When
Hmm.
people say, "Oh, it's a Christian band," not necessarily. It's a person who believes in Christ that plays music in a band. Now, of course, we're going to judge what they say, the words, all that. But I think music obviously was created by God, and it's beautiful. If you use it the right way, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when Striper came out and started using riffs and drums and say,
Yeah,
God's got this under control, and soldiers under command, I'm like, wow. And that became an anthem for a
yeah.
lot of Christians back then. It became a huge anthem. And Christian music today, I have to say, and I know we're going off a little bit off the subject, but because I think it's a little more polished now, it's a little more too commercialized
Hmm.
in a way. I try to tell people that don't go to a concert to get fed. Don't go to a concert to get fed. They're there to entertain you. You go to church to get fed.
They're
You
there for
read
the
the Bible
stage.
to get fed. You're there to get entertained and have fun.
Yeah.
You know who said that once? Rich Mullins. He
Mm.
literally said, don't come to me to get the word. I'm
Yeah.
here to entertain you, to share my thoughts and but don't take it as religion,
Yeah.
and that's the way I take it. I take everything, whatever music I'm listening to, I'll take whatever part I can from it and make it my own. And so yeah. But when you said that verse, I knew Striper all
Yeah.
the way. Like when
I
you
love
said, I
that
said
verse. It's a
Striper.
good verse.
Yeah. Actually,
Well, I
matter of
know
fact, I'm
there's
gonna
a
show
lot
you.
of
You're gonna laugh. But there's the tattoo of Striper,
okay. Yeah, okay,
and
I
then
see it.
that's the date of our birth, the date of
Um,
our
I also like Michael Sweet's song 10 because he's talking about the 10 commandments. I
yes,
was like,
very
man, at
good.
first I was like, what is this? And I was like, oh my goodness, it's about the 10 commandments. It was a pretty good song because I hadn't heard it before, but I
Yeah,
listened to it
their new
and
album is good. Their new album is produced really well.
yeah,
Uh,
it's good.
for them
I
doing
don't
it on
really
their own.
listen to that as much as, as I did when I was in my rebel days, I will call it,
Hmm.
when I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
being the,
for sure.
the trouble kid that we all
Yeah.
are.
Oh, of
But
course, of
I
course.
think that
Yeah.
when you want to, sometimes when you want to go back and you reminisce, you want to listen. I mean, all week long I've been listening to Honestly because that, Honestly and what's the other song? We Believe or something, or I Believe in You.
Hmm.
That
Right.
one, there's a few of them that I forgot all about, and I was like, I know there's more than one song that they wrote. They're not a one hit wonder band, but
No, no,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. They
what
have a
it?
lot of good songs.
Yeah, they
Until
got stuck on there for a while.
yeah, and then they did Against the Law, which I think was their worst album
Yeah.
ever. That's when they were trying to go more secular than when they were
Mm.
um and Against the Law. And I think after they Against the Law, then he went on his own and everybody started doing the stuff on their own. And then the bassist left. He was the first one to leave, and they got a new bassist. And then Oz was not around for a while, and I don't think he's touring with them right now. He's not feeling well,
Mm.
so he's not touring with them right now. But yeah, I keep a look at them because it
Yeah.
reminds you of where I was and what they did for me,
Yeah.
And I tell people that music, and that's why I love pop culture
Yeah.
because look what it can do. It can bring you back to beautiful memories. It can also bring you back to horrible memories,
Yeah.
but those memories God can take care of, right? So that's the way I see it. So
Awesome. Well, we have to get to wrapping up here, but I just
of
wanted to
course,
say to you that I appreciate your time and I appreciate you sharing
sure.
your testimony with us, and thank you
Thank you.
for being vulnerable enough to put that on the table because I believe honestly that God does help us overcome strongholds in our life, and when we step out on that faith and we start crushing those strongholds the way that we do,
Hmm.
and we allow God to work in us and through us, what comes out on the other side is amazing. And
Yeah,
I
for
see it
sure.
in you
Amen.
with
Yeah.
what you're
Thank you.
doing. You're doing so many things. You have a whole plate full too. You're a lot like
Yeah.
me, but everything you're doing is amazing and great, and you're doing it for the kingdom, not just. You can tell it's not self glorified, but
Hmm.
it's something kind of like sometimes when you overcome a stronghold, it's almost like you're paying God back for getting you through it. It's like, God, thank you.
Facts.
I
Absolutely.
didn't know I was there, but you got me through it. And what can
Hmm.
I feel like not that we owe him because we don't owe him
Right,
anything.
right. But you
The
kind of
price
feel
is
like you
paid,
have to pay it back.
but
Yeah.
you just want to be honorable. You want to just be like, God, I
Hmm.
just appreciate it so much for what you've done for me. I want to show you how much it means.
Right.
And so I feel like you do that. I can see
Thank you.
that with you. And I love that about
Appreciate
it.
that.
And I'm
And
just
I
so
thank you
excited
for
that I
having me
got to
here.
meet you.
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank
I
you so
didn't.
much. Thank you so much for giving me the honor to be here and share my faith and my crazy life that I have. But yeah, thank you so much. And I hope that, I know that God has many things for you, things that you're not even going to expect. And they're going to be a blessing. And I see this the way you are and the way you're making me feel very comfortable. And I think
Good. Thank you.
that's very, very huge for podcasters and then to make everyone feel because we'll open up and talk, right? You don't want to make them. So I see and especially this topic is a very big and strong topic. So I see you going, and I'm going to be excited to hear where God, takes you, uh, your ministry to things you're
Thank you.
not even going to expect. You'll be like, whoa,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I do need to wrap it up. So I just wanted
sure.
to, again, thank you. But I have one question real quick to ask you,
Hmm.
real quickly. What legacy do you want to leave behind?
What legacy?
Mm-hmm. I
That I
know
was
it's
a simple, I was a simple Christian man that fought every day of his life to live up to what God wants me to be. That's all. I don't want no accolades or anything. Just a man that loved God and loved his family, and that's about it. Nothing, we don't need I don't need the accolades. As long as people see God through me, then that's the biggest accolade I could have in the world. And that's who I want people to remember, that, this man talked about God, and him talking made an impact in my life, that I can follow God. And that's what I see. So, yeah,
Awesome. Thank you. Well,
of course.
I just want to share with our listeners and just say, thank you for that amazing testimony. But um, as we wrap up, I just want to ask our listeners, like, if there's any testimonies that they have or want to share, I want them to get a hold of me and talk to me, and I want to get you on here for an interview because this has been so fun. I've enjoyed this, and I'm getting better, I think, but I'm not sure.
You
But I'm loving
did
everything
great.
about
You did
it.
great.
Yeah, I'm loving everything about it. And I'm sticking to my guns because that faith part that you're talking about earlier, I call it God's nudge because he literally had to nudge me into action because I sat for over a year when he told me to do a
Mm.
podcast and I said, "You're nuts. I'm not doing that." You're nuts. And I was like, literally, like, you're nuts. And God was like, no, I really want you to do this. And I even told my daughter, and my daughter said to me, Mom, you're nuts if you do it. And so, like, God gives you those little nudges and you step out on faith. And so I understand when you said you were working through your the Kingdom Forge, that you want everything to be perfect, but just remember,
Hmm.
it's not going to go anywhere until you push play. You got to push
For
record, you got to get
sure.
out there, and I'm excited for you. I'm so
Absolutely.
excited to see where that
Thank you.
goes. So, for
Thank
all
you.
of our listeners out there today, I just want to thank you for being here with another great episode of Crushing Strongholds. And if you do have a testimony or if you are going through a stronghold, reach out because we are here. And I just want to bless you and pray for you. If you need prayer, you can go to crushingstrongholds.com and you will see that there's a place on there for need for prayer. Or if you just need a clarity call, get a hold of me and I can talk to you about how you can crush your own strongholds if you're struggling or feel stuck. But again, we just thank you so much for being here. And it's been an honor. God bless, and y'all take care.